I fix that a little bit. Excuse me. Hello. I'm literally just getting home in the last 10 minutes, so we're gonna start. We'll start shortly. We're gonna start with Bennett. So if it says preheat the oven, so we're gonna want to get things preheat. You can start preheating your oven. I'm just getting every computer. Because we can do the burgers while the Bennett's in the oven. Hello. Welcome. I'm not sure how many people we're going to get today. I know some people said that they're not going to be here because it's weekend. They're going camping and doing different things. So I'm glad that a couple of you guys came out so far. And I'm hoping more will come in the next little bit. And if not, we're going to keep going. I'll post it afterwards. And so we're going to get started with the Bennett first. So do you want to start getting your ingredients out? Does everyone have the recipes? So you're going to need your recipe for the Bennett. I did put it in the newsletter. Just getting it open. So it's literally flour, salt, and milk, baking soda. As you know, there's not much of a recipe for burgers, and that's because they're kind of like a very, they're very fun because they're super easy to make, but you can put all kinds of different flavors in them depending on what you like. So let's see. So yeah, we're gonna start with the Bennett. So you're gonna need your bowl, flour, all-purpose flour, cake flour, whatever you got for flour-wise, or whole wheat, that's fine. Baking powder, a little bit of sugar, salt, margarine or butter, and a cup of milk or water works well. I'm just gonna wipe this down because I have cats, and I'd like to think they don't get on the countertops, but in reality, they're on the countertops. So I'm just gonna clean that up real quick. And we're going to So oven, we need to preheat to 425. Did you guys have a good week? Okay, so that's all clean up. Oh, so I'm just going to grab my stuff out of my flour, sugar. So what's my flour, and then we have baking powder, not baking soda. I told you. Baking powder. I always put in a little bit of salt. You have to do baking powder, flour, margarine, milk, and sugar. I keep everything in tubs because I do so much baking. I just label everything super neatly so that I know where everything is. And so we're going to modify it slightly from the recipe, and And that's only with how we shape it. So we're not going to make it into a massive ball. We're going to make it into smaller balls. Okay, bannock. Yes, we're starting with the bannock. Are you guys familiar with what bannock is, or have heard of it before? I might get some yeses, I might get some no's. So bannock is what we kind of call a rough bread. So it's things like tortillas. Different cultures have different types of like rough breads that they use or eat with different foods. Bannock's not traditionally indigenous, although we do have, indigenous groups have used it for years. A lot of the ingredients commonly used came over with Europeans. One of my friends who lives up north said they actually used like cattail roots before. So they've ground down the roots into a flour and used that to make a rough bread. Or they also make it with things like pemmican, nuts, fat, and seeds to have it as a nutritional staple. So bannock is indigenous, but also a lot of the modernizations on it today comes from ingredients that are brought over by Europeans or given by the Europeans. No, if you have hamburger buns and you don't want to make bannock, that is okay. I may make my bannock as a base. Because I don't buy a lot of hamburger buns and stuff like that. I like to use bannock as a base. So once I get this in the oven, we'll start on the burgers right away. So I sent you guys, I'm only going to make half the recipe, only because I live alone, so I don't need 3 cups of bannock makes quite a bit. If you have 2 pounds of meat, like hamburger meat or ground beef or ground chicken, and you want to make essentially 8 burgers, you can make the full recipe. It'll make about 8 rounds. Bannock kind of tastes like a cross between a scone dough and a kind of a cross between like a scone or a biscuit, but it's not as bready because it has baking powder in it versus yeast. So it's not going to puff up the same as a hamburger bread or hamburger bun, but it's still just as good. So I'm going to use 1.5 cups, hence how I love my bowls. I see more people joining in. That'd be great. That is awesome. I know some people are probably gone away for the weekend because it's such a beautiful day out. So that's 1. I'm going to measure 1.5. So I'm going to half everything. If any of you guys have ever made pie crust, start with adding your flour and your butter together. And you're going to mix that first. There we go. Don't put in your milk right away. I had a kid that did this once and it kind of tastes like graham crackers. Not that that's a bad thing. And I'm just going to use a little bit of a pinch of salt. And I know it says they give you a recipe. Essentially, you add the milk last. It is okay to add your baking powder, your flour, your sugar, and your salt together. And then add your milk last. And I need 1 tablespoon baking powder for me. You guys are going to be using 2. So 3 cups of flour, 2 tablespoons of baking powder, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 cup of butter. So that's more than enough for that. Because okay, I just saw the note for 6 people. Yes, if you make the full, you may have a bit of extra, or you can just shape it into 6, but that'll work fine. I like this. If you have gloves and don't like getting your hands dirty, you can use gloves. I'm just gonna get my hands dirty because it doesn't bother me one bit. So I got my flour, my sugar, my baking powder, and my salt. And then I'm just going to measure up my butter. I grab it from the fridge. You can use margarine. You don't need to use actual butter. I'm using margarine with avocado oil because that's what I have. That works. So yeah, trick if you're getting stuff like butter that's super sticky, that can be a bit of a pain to get out of containers. It might seem counterproductive. I use the back of the spoon. I don't actually use the scoop part, which I know doesn't sound like it makes sense. I use the back of it because it still sticks. And then when you go to measure it, it's easier to get into the bowl and it's easier to level. And then it stays cleaner and you're not trying to get as much of it out. Half a cup, so I only need a quarter. I know it seems counterproductive and very funny, but it works really well because then you can level out your butter and your spoons stay clean and you're not trying to clean. It's just quicker. Question is, do you guys have food processors or a small blender or any of that for burger stuff after? If you have a small one, yeah, if you have a small one, I want to get it because unless you have, like, when I got roasted red peppers I put for burgers, I just get the stuff in the jar. So I'm going to have to run mine through the food processor or you can cut it up if you don't. It's not a huge deal, but for those who are just here for the burger part, they want to get their stuff out for that, you can do that. Essentially, if you've ever made pie crust before, all you're going to do is you're going to work your butter all through your flour. I'm going to use my hands for this because that's what I do. I don't mind using my hands for this. It's not gooey for me. So you're just literally going to run work your butter through your flour, kind of like if you've ever made pie crust. It looks like little beads going through. And yes, I wash my hands. Not using peppers, will this be okay? So what are you, Jennifer? Oops, sorry. Well, I'm not saying last names, so it's not that much of an identifier. What are you using then? If you're not using roasted red peppers, are you using breadcrumbs or egg? Because I know I didn't put that in the recipe. I tend to just use roasted red peppers because you need a binder to keep the hamburger together. So if you don't have roasted red peppers, grab 1 egg and you can use probably about an egg. You can beat an egg. Okay, that'll work. There, so mine you can't really tell. It just looks like a whole bunch of flour. But essentially, I don't see any huge clumps of butter. It's worked in pretty well. And then that's when I'm going to start adding my milk. So it says 3 1/4 to 1 cup. You might need more. Believe it or not, elevation affects baking. So because we live in Alberta, it is a lot drier. You might need more moisture. Essentially, we're looking kind of like something with the protein balls, except we can't add more flour at the end. We're looking for something that just doesn't fully stick to our hands, but just wet enough to hold its shape together. So I tend to start with 3/4 of a cup, and I'll add about half of it, and then mix it up. Add a bit more, mix it up. Have any of you guys ever mixed bread before? So obviously mine's not holding, it's just super crumbly. So I'm gonna add the rest of this milk because I only measured, I start with about half of what it asks for and mix that in first. And then I'll add a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. Bennett's actually one of the staples I normally make with grade 7s. That's actually the first lab. You can learn a little bit about the history of it. We make compound butters with it, which is a lot of fun. So for those who don't know what compound butter is, it's flavored butter. So I do a maple one, I've done pumpkin spice ones. I've done savory ones, and I'm just gonna throw a bit of flour I knocked out back into my bowl. For those who are making the Bennett, how are you faring? Is it coming together okay? Oh, okay, sorry. For those who have, I've been in classic, I've been very on the, I guess a little anxious today, and I don't know why, just going, it feels like I'm going at hyper speed all day. Just kind of. So yeah, you're just gonna work your butter through. You're gonna work it through so it's like beads, or that it just incorporate neatly into the flour, and then you're gonna start about adding half the milk, and you're gonna knead it together. Then you're gonna the butter is not, if you're using margarine, you don't have to worry too much because the margarine will incorporate pretty well. It's when you're using hard butter or real butter that's really, especially if it's still cold, that you have to really break it up, because if not, it gets really clumpy. So as long as you can tell that it's like beat it down and mix with the flour, you're good to go. So I ended up adding, even though I'm only halving my recipe, I ended up adding 3/4 of a cup. So that's what my dough looks like. And still like it's a little, okay, so I didn't see any. Yeah, so it looks like that. The bowl's super clean. You're essentially just gonna add enough milk so it holds together. It's not sticky to your hands anymore. You're mixing this with your hands. Don't worry about it. As you keep mixing, it'll slowly come off your hands into the dough. You can knead with a spatula or your hands. I like my hands just because I can make sure everything's mixed in. And if you use a spatula, it's probably going to stick quite a bit. And you can definitely use a spatula or a wooden spoon. I've used one of the flatter wooden spoons. Spatula will be easier because then you can just scrape alongside the bowl. So that works well too. At some point, you're going to have to use your hands because you're going to have to knead it a little bit like you would bread. So is everybody making the bannock? Or I know one person isn't. So I'm going to stop playing with mine, and I'm going to start shaping it out. So I'm not. I'll put my milk away while you guys are finishing up your bannock. So who else? Is there anybody? Are there people here who have the red peppers, or they are going to use egg? And I have no comments. I'm gonna make my bannock flat. It's not gonna pop up a whole lot. You can make it thicker if you're planning on cutting it and slicing it and eating like a bun. I tend to do the stack approach. So I put my bannock on the bottom, my patty on top, and then your cheese and your toppings, and kind of eat it like a fork and knife. Because it depends on if your bannock's a little dry, it might crumble. And if your bannock's super moist, it could get out mushy. I just tend to like it as open. I've actually made bannocks with like a taco seasoning on top and stuff. But like taco meat and stuff like that, and you eat it like, instead of tortilla chips, use bannock. And then you put your tomatoes and your meals on it. So mine's gonna be. So how you doing there? So those who are making the bannock, are you doing all right? You almost ready to? Take mine like a tortilla and flatten it out. You're still kneading. You only need to knead it until it stays together in a ball. You don't. If you over knead it, it'll get tough and crumbly. So you just have to knead it to the point where it's holding and it's not sticking to your hands. So just so you know, I sent. Okay, so you're gonna have to get the stuff that's drying to the bottom into the sticky stuff, because if you add too much milk, it's not going to. It'll get super sticky. Try using a spatula to scrape along the bottom and like flip your dough over to get it towards the top so you can mix it in better. I tend to use my hands because I like scoop along the bottom with my hand and then flip it all over into the bowl so then you can knead it through. It's kind of like that pull from underneath, pull forward, like when you're making, or from the back to forward when you're making pizza dough. Oh, and I'm just gonna make mine. They look like little tortillas, little rough patties. And that'll only take about 10 minutes to cook. I'm gonna have some fun with mine. I'm gonna brush mine with a little bit of olive oil, and I'm going to add a little bit of sea salt, maybe some sea salt, or what else do I have? You can add really what you want. I've made this before with like doing for your burger, doing like fajita seasoning in your burger and making like, and then topping it with guacamole and that kind of stuff, which is super delicious. I'm just gonna try to keep it simple for today. I'm actually gonna add a little bit of seasoned salt. And for those, yeah, that's my spice cupboard. And that ain't all of it. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more salt and stuff because I am making it a little savory. What do you guys like to top your burgers with? I know I do. Oh, roasted garlic. What do you guys like to put on your burgers? What's some of your favorite stuff? I just want to make sure we're all okay with the ketchup. Do you ever make your own ketchup? Tomatoes, melted cheese. Cheese is so good. If you like, I really like Mexican food, so you could all. Ketchup is actually really easy to make. It's spices and tomato paste, except when you buy ketchup, it has more sugar in it. So I just don't add as much sugar. If you like ketchup and cheese, try make it. You can make it like a taco burger, and you can top it with either guacamole or you can top it with salsa. And I really like there's a cheddar with jalapeno or Monterey Jack with jalapeno. And if you grate that and let that melt, it tastes like you're eating a taco burger. So good. All right, how are we doing on the bannock front, guys? Those who are making the bannock. know what I'll make for you guys answer? I'm going to throw mine in the oven because mine's going to need only about 10 minutes to cook. So I'm going to get it in the oven and get the timer on. And I'm going to check it in 10 minutes. Bennett generally only takes about 20 minutes to cook. So 10 is going to be enough. 10 will be enough for this amount. And I'm just going to clean up my bowl real quick. Are you guys all have beef, or are anybody using chicken? Chicken, okay. Kind of falling apart. So you need a bit more moisture. You need a little bit more milk. It says up to a cup, but really in Calgary, it could be a cup and a half. It really depends on what type of flour you're using and you're doing chicken. Okay, so for those doing chicken burger, is everybody else using beef then? One chicken, rest beef? So the only difference between the chicken and beef is chicken, you're probably gonna need a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper. Just a little bit more of the spices because, yeah. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna I'm not abandoning the Bennett people. I'm just gonna get ready for doing the hamburgers and just making sure I have my list of spices out and ready to go. I underestimated how much time it would take me to get home from school, so it's all good. So Bennett people, how we doing? Okay, 2 pounds of ground beef, ground chicken, salt, pepper. Oh yeah, Worcestershire. That's what I was forgetting. I knew I was thinking about taking out something. I forgot what it was. Alrighty, so black pepper, onion powder, salt's already out. I'll use a bit of seasoned salt too. Worcestershire, garlic, smoked paprika or paprika. I like smoked paprika. Roasted red peppers, jar of camel work, and Worcestershire. That's not the same. Now, for those who like things spicy, if you have Tabasco sauce and want to throw in a bit of Tabasco or sriracha, you can also do that. Or if you just like sriracha, like some people just love sriracha on top. Paprika adds a nice little bit of kick to it. Not really a lot of kick, but nice flavor to it. So if you like sriracha, you can put sriracha in. You can put Tabasco sauce in, or if you like things spicy, you can put in the hot sauce of your choice. I'm going to grab. I have this little one that says "Know Your Hazards." It's supposed to be like super hot. I'm not a huge fan of hot sauce, but a parent gave me that last year. So it's cayenne. So it's made with aged pepper and vinegar and so. How's the Bennett people going? Okay. So I like to season according to taste. I really like flavors. So it's going to be a little harder for those who are not using roasted red peppers, that they're using, like if you're using egg, because what you'll do is you'll make your spice mixture in a bowl, and then if you use a toothpick and wet it, dip it in the spice and taste it, then you can get a gauge for how spicy, or if it tastes like something is missing or something's too salty. You have time to fix it before throwing it into your ground beef. Those who are using roasted red peppers, we're going to add everything to the food processor and spin it through, and then you can actually taste it with a spoon to see if something's too hot. If you decide to put in hot sauce, add very little. Just add a couple, because it's easier. It's a lot easier to add it in than take it out. Well, you can't really take it out. You start over. So, how are we doing? Are we guys getting almost ready to move on to burgers? For those who have been waiting for burgers, if you have a small bowl, or if you're doing it in the food processor, if you want to start measuring your spices, you're going to use about, for salt and pepper, you're going to use about half a teaspoon. Oh, that's fine. Not fine. That's totally fine. Like, that's why I'm kind of just asking, if you, because I'm like, I can completely modify and change whatever I need to at the drop of a hat. It's not, if you knew how many allergies I accommodate in the run of a school year when I'm teaching foods, I have like hacks for everything. So the reason I did roasted red peppers, or we can use egg, is because some people are allergic to like gluten-free for breadcrumbs. Normally, most recipes call for breadcrumbs and egg. I don't like using it because of the altitude in Alberta, everything dries out so quickly. I find that if I grill them or fry them, I lose the moisture in my patty too quick and it falls apart. Using things like just egg and mixing it really well, or running like stuff like roasted red peppers through a food processor with your spices, helps it keep moisture. And I like has a nice flavor to it. You're adding vegetables, so if people don't like vegetables, you actually can't taste the roasted red pepper as much. It's actually not say pretty genius, but it's I saw a friend of mine, because I normally use tomatoes. I found a recipe I always say use ketchup or tomato paste, and one of my friends said one day I'm allergic to tomatoes, so we brainstormed some things we could use instead, and roasted red peppers was one of them. And I like the taste a lot better than tomatoes. You could use tomato paste though, too. That's another option. I just like the smokiness and when you barbecue them. So, for your spices, half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and we can add that and change that in a little bit. You are going to use full teaspoons of your onion powder, your garlic powder, your paprika, and just a little dash of hot sauce if you're adding hot sauce. Worcestershire, you're going to add a full teaspoon too. So other than salt and pepper, which is about a half a teaspoon each, we might have to add a little more. Everything else is going to be a full teaspoon. And we're going to add it to your spices. And we might need to add a little more. I'm starting mild. I would add at least 2 teaspoons normally, because I like a strong flavor of everything. I actually made my own spices. This is onion powder. So I used with chives. So I used onion powder, green onions, white onions, red onions, and chives. And I dehydrated them and threw them in the spice grinder. So teaspoon. Any questions so far? We're kind of rolling around, okay? Rolling along, okay? No. And for those saying this, you're using a spoon, I actually have a 4-in-1 spoon. So it does this side's a tablespoon, this side's a teaspoon, the other side's a half teaspoon, and then it has a 1/4 teaspoon measurement on as well. So that's why if it looks like I'm not changing spoons, I technically am. I just have all of it in one spoon. If you're wondering why my pepper looks funky, It's actually turmeric. There's turmeric in my black pepper, so I have a mixture of both that I like. So I'm gonna put this. I just grind a bunch in. Oh, there's my alarm, my timer. My Bennett's not quite done. You're gonna send for Bennett. You're just looking for it to be nice and golden brown. I'll show you what it looks like so far. So like, this is how much my Bennett puffed up and I did half a recipe. So, 1 second, so mine looks kind of pale. So I'm gonna put it back in for about 5 minutes so it gets a little bit more golden brown. And then I'm gonna So measurements, I start with a full teaspoon of everything except salt and pepper. I put about a half teaspoon of salt and pepper to start, and then I just kind of adjust my spice mixture as I'm going. And I'll show you guys how to do that. Because the fun thing is, you don't have to use just these spices. I've done curry burgers. A student of mine gave me garam masala a few years ago, actually last year, prior to COVID, and it's fantastic. I actually use a bit of coconut milk and stuff in chicken and make a curry burger. If you like things like oregano or basil, you can add a little bit of that as well. You can play around with your spices. I just start with a teaspoon of each and then a half teaspoon of salt and pepper just to get as a start. Because especially if you have 2 full pounds of meat, you might need a little more. So I'm starting with that. My seasoned salt, I put a little bit in. Smoked paprika, I put in a full teaspoon. How are you guys doing with your spice mixes? That's for yeah, we'll use garlic today. So onion powder, garlic powder, paprika. Some people have a whole bunch of things they put in. So your spice mixture. Mine kind of looks like that and mix it up a little bit. If you are using egg, you can take a toothpick or I just tend to take a cold spoon and mix everything together really well. And then just take a toothpick, wet it. My toothpick's right here. Because licking your finger and putting it in is not the most sanitary, obviously. No, don't add it right now. Because there's risk of salmonella if you eat raw egg. So I just wet my toothpick. I'm gonna move it through my spice mixture, and then I'm gonna taste. And it's gonna be more intense. If you find this too mild, then it means you're gonna need to add more, and you might have to double up. It depends on what kind of meat you're using and how much of it you're using. So I'm gonna taste. If it tastes a little, so when you taste it, it should taste a little stronger than what you would expect to taste in a burger. So if it tastes like, oh my God, it's too overpowering, then by the time you put it into meat, it'll be fine. Like when I taste it, you can taste garlic. I can taste onion. I don't taste enough salt, so I'm gonna put a bit more salt in there. Because let's face it, we can't taste raw meat. I don't taste much pepper. And this is the fun part, because all this stuff is about exploring what kind of taste you like. I could say do just this much. The reality is I always add a lot more because I like the taste of pepper. I like the taste of sea salt. I'm gonna add a little bit more. Is anybody using more than, say, is everybody using 2 pounds? Or like a big tray, small tray? I'll show you what I'm using for hamburger. I'm using this much. 1 pound. Okay. So then a teaspoon will be good. If you're using 2 full pounds, you might have to go at least a teaspoon and a half for each, and then a full teaspoon of salt and a full teaspoon of pepper to start. I like to start, I always start with, if it's a pound, I have 2 of those. Okay, so then double. So go 2 teaspoons of everything. I tend to say I start my base with a teaspoon per pound, and then I kind of adjust. If you have 2 full pounds, you're going to probably have to double up, and especially if you're using chicken, because chicken's a very, chicken generally needs a lot more salt to it, depending on, let's say, turkey needs a lot more. Chicken's generally better, but turkey needs a lot more. Oh, that's my 5-minute mark there. So, I probably put a little bit more milk in my Bennett. My Bennett looks a little dry in there. So, is everybody else have their Bennett in the oven? I just wash them again so they cut around eat. There's one thing you notice: the more you cook with this type of stuff, the more you're going to end up washing your hands a lot, because before you we're going to get all our spices ready. Mine has 12 minutes left. Okay, that's fine. Okay, we're doing good with the Bennett then. So we're going to finish getting our spice mixtures and stuff ready. For those who are using the roasted red peppers, we're going to use about half the bottle for a pound. So these are purely, if I had a gas stove, I don't have a gas stove at home, I have like electric, I would just do my own, because essentially you char them down. So these are actually full peppers. Oops. And they're a little on the sweeter side because they're roasted red peppers. I tend to use half a jar for a pound. What's really nice too, I use them in pizza sauce. Okay, sorry. Thank you for asking me to slow down. Sometimes I get like super excited and just kind of go off on a tangent. So I actually started making this stuff with my stepmom. My aunt taught me how to make Bennett for the first time. And when I did, I might have to cut this one a little bit more. Normally, if this was in the foods room, if we were all together in the foods room, I would literally come around and make sure everybody has all their mixtures and stuff done before I move on. So this is a little harder. Oh, literally this is the rest of my peppers. So I'm just gonna, this is a big pepper. So I'm just gonna cut a little bit off. And stick that back in the jar. So for your spices, remember, teaspoon of everything. You're probably going to end up using a teaspoon of salt as well, and maybe a teaspoon of pepper, depending on your the Worcestershire. If you add hot sauce, we're going to add it to the mixture. For those who are using egg, it's only like 2 or 3 quick squirts. It's like 2 or 3 shakes. So you can add that to when you beat your egg mixture. So if you're using egg, for those who are using the 2 pounds, you're gonna need 2 eggs. And you're just gonna beat that up in a bowl. I think you might have asked the question just as quickly as I said it. Yeah. So we're going to use, normally it's an egg per pound. So you're going to use 2 eggs in total. Nope. That's why I use roasted red peppers and I don't use any egg at all. So if some people aren't using roasted red peppers, egg is a good replacement for that. I like using the roasted red peppers because then it makes, I like putting extra vegetables into things. And I used to cut up peppers and onions and put all that in my burgers, but then I found as it cooked, it let out too much water and then the burger would fall apart. So I find using roasted red peppers or even roasted tomatoes and running them through the food processor, you can get them in your burger, get your burger a little bit more consistent, and the flavor goes through really well. So yes, you don't have to use eggs. I need to keep an eye. Geez, that timer keeps going fast. So my Bennett, I'm using my Bennett is, there you go. My Bennett is finished. It just nice and brown on the bottom. I could have nice and crunch, has a nice crust on the top. If you made your burger Bennett thicker, you can cut it. If not, you can top it, and then you can put more toppings on top and just eat this. Kind of like an open face sandwich. I made mine purposely thinner so that I'm gonna do everything as a topper. How are we doing? How are we doing with spices? How are we doing okay? Nope, I'm gonna put the spices through with the roasted red pepper and I'm gonna blend it together because then you don't get so I'm not gonna recommend throwing just the spices on the meat. So if you're doing the egg, mix it in with the egg. After you have everything measured and you taste with your toothpick, make sure because if you find it too dull when you taste it with the toothpick, that means you need more spice. So you need at least another half teaspoon, maybe a full one. I tend to throw a lot of spice into everything, so each his own. I'm gonna put it in the roasted red peppers because that's another way to taste it. Yeah, you add everything. If you're content with your spice blend after you taste it with your toothpick, you're gonna put everything into your egg mixture and you're gonna like mix it up really well. For those who are using the food processor and the roasted red peppers, you're gonna put your spices, if you put Tabasco or hot sauce and your Worcestershire, you're going to put it in with your roasted red peppers and you're gonna blend it together. Because then you don't get clumps of spice in the meat. I'm just gonna grab a mat. Are y'all doing okay? Ready to keep on the going? So I'm gonna use a mat to shape like a cutting mat to shape my burgers on. Are you going? How are my? Okay, so I'm going to toss my spices into my food processor with my roasted red pepper. I'm going to add 3 shakes of Worcestershire. I really like Worcestershire sauce and stuff, so you can, if you don't, it's like malt vinegar, white vinegar, black shrimp, molasses. That's it. I'm going to add about 3. 1, 2, 3. You can add 2. I'm going to add a little bit of hot sauce. Spice up light a little bit. I'm not huge on spice, but I like a little bit. And then I'm gonna run. Where's my other one? I have one that's a Montreal steak spice that I really like, so I'm going to throw a little bit of that in extra because that's just me. That's what I like on mine. So I'm going to run mine through the food processor so we can get noisy for a sec. Actually, my food processor is quieter than I thought. So, mine looks like that. If you have a mini spatula, you can use a mini spatula, spoon. So mine looks like a slurry. All it is just beat down the roasted red pepper. If you like to taste it, you can grab a small spoon before you put it in the meat. Add enough hot sauce. I can taste it. I can taste the salt. Sorry if that made a bit noise. I can taste garlic. I can add a little bit of Worcestershire, a little bit more. That's what I like. And the fun part about this is that I'm giving you a guide for a base level. You can put whatever you like spice-wise into it, and you can change it. I've done taco seasoning, fajita seasoning. I've done like a Greek seasoning, like what you would put on souvlaki. And I've put that in there too. I've changed up so many times. It's a neat, instead of making it into a burger, you can make it into meatballs. I've done that with chicken too. How are you guys planning to cook this? Are you going to do it in a pan or are you going to do it on a grill? Pan. Okay. So when we get it mixed, you guys can wash your hands, and we'll put. I might have to move my computer a little bit, but essentially, do you guys have meat thermometers? If you don't, that's okay. That's fine. We can cook it in the pan. I'll show you how to do one in the pan. So security, we're not going to use a lot of oil. If you're using a pan, we're not going to cook it on a super high heat. We're going to cook it on a medium heat with probably about a tablespoon for you who's using chicken, teaspoon oil for beef, because depending on what type of ground beef you're using, it will have oil. If you're using lean or extra lean, you're going to have to put oil. But if you're not, if you're using regular, medium, and even some lean ground beef, you could just warm your pan up to like a nice medium heat. If your temperature goes to 8, let's say put it on 5, and we'll let our pans get nice and warm. So all you're gonna do is toss all your spice and stuff in. My spice mixture actually tastes pretty cool. I like it. It tastes like roasted red peppers with paprika, garlic, and salt and pepper. Super yummy. There you go. Kind of fun and you can use a spatula. I'm going to use my hands. Doing hamburger meat with a spatula is kind of it's hard at times. Is light brown before I get my hands in this? Light brown or like a golden brown. That's how mine looks at the bottom. So on the top, mine's only a light brown because I use whole grain flour. On the bottom, I'm looking for like that, but that color. Essentially, then it's going to be cooked all the way through. Essentially, you just want it so it's not doughy on the inside. Did yours puff up? Or is yours more of a flat one too? So all you do is add your spice mixture from your thing, and you're just going to smush your hands through all of it. This is the fun part I like about doing burgers. Oh, perfect. So if yours puffed up a lot, that's awesome. I purposely made mine flatter. That means I overmixed mine a little bit more, and I should have added a bit more water, and it would have puffed up more. So you could probably cut yours and eat it like a burger if you wanted to. Depends on how you want to do it. So guys, you're going to mix. Just be careful if you have to touch anything else after you put your hands in, obviously in raw meat, you're going to have to wash them really well in warm water. Just because obviously we don't want anyone to get sick, or if you're using chicken, make sure that you wash your counter and everything really well afterwards, because risk of salmonella. Okay. Sweet. You have to send photos. So guys, those of you making, please send me photos before you get, a lot of people say, well, we kind of ate the protein balls before we remember to take a picture. Please take a picture. And if you guys are in the pictures, that would be awesome. We're trying to get some more photos for yearbook. So if you can see mine, actually, well, it doesn't stick to my hands. It's not falling apart. It's not super wet. It has a nice consistency. It's just a ball of meat, really. A big meatball. But you can see, like, there's spice throughout all of it. The roasted red peppers, you can see nothing's clumped. So it's just super consistent all the way through. That's all you're looking for your burgers. Since we can't taste it anymore, we can't taste our spice mixture, obviously, because it's in raw meat. Now, if you wanted to cook up a small, little tiny one to taste the flavor, you can do that. Yep, it's gonna be really wet. Egg, but chicken is really, chicken's a lot drier, so it's gonna be a little wet. The thing is, when you put it in the pan, we just have to make sure the pan's heated well, and you don't flip it until it's cooked halfway through. So you're gonna leave it for a solid 5 minutes on one side before you try to flip it, and then it should hold together and shouldn't break up. Because most times I've seen it break up, it's either too much breadcrumbs, or I don't like using breadcrumbs because we live in Alberta, it's a dry climate. So, and I find they hold together better. And then if you leave it for a solid 5 minutes on one side, then flip it only once to cook it all the way through to the other side, it doesn't fall apart. Even on the barbecue, when I did mine on the barbecue last time, they held together, and even when I flipped them, nothing fell apart, and I used the exact same recipe. So if you have a scales and want to weigh them, you can. I tend to go for like the palm of my hand. I know my bannock is the palm of my hand because that's kind of what I went with. You can make these slightly bigger than the palm of your hand if you want them to fit better on your bannock. Or if you have hamburger buns, I would look at about how big your hamburger bun is. If they're about that big, like a standard bun, make your burger slightly bigger because they shrink when they cook. One of my biggest pet peeves is when you get a hamburger and the burger is like this big and the bun's like that big. That's an exaggeration, but yeah, that's one of my pet peeves, is when the burger is so much smaller than the bun. And all you're going to do is you're just going to shape them very lightly, and you're going to lay them on either, you have a cutting board, cutting mat. It's something that you can transfer to the stove when you're ready to cook them. Yeah. My biggest pet peeve is having the bun. Not that the math teacher's coming out me a little bit. Everything has to be like the ratio, the proportion of everything, like pickles to vegetables to meat to bun. That's why I'm not a huge fan of lasagna. I find it's way too much sauce and way too much noodles and not enough of everything else. Now, if lasagna is layered properly, super great. But yeah, I'm just making mine slightly bigger than my bannock. And I'll probably get, if you're doing a pound, you get between 4 and 6. depending on how big you're making them. Because if you're using a pound, technically you can make 4 quarter pounders, or you can make 5 or 6 slightly smaller. I said 2 pounds because generally if you're a family of 4 to 6, say a family of 6 and you eat 1 to 2, then 2 pounds will be enough, because if you think about it, that'll be 8 quarter pounders, and a quarter pounder is quite a bit. So mine look like that. How's your guys' burgers coming along? How are they looking? Am I going too fast? Funny thing is, I'm pretty good. I made 5 burgers and 5 pieces of bag. So I'm gonna, that means, and slime. Well, slime because of egg. You're gonna mix it all with your egg is generally super slimy. Are they holding together? So if you were to take a little bit in a ball in your hand, will it hold in the ball or will it break apart? So I'm waiting for so don't hold form. So if they don't hold form, it could be the chicken. Don't hold form. Do you have crackers? So if they're not holding form, they're a little mushy. Also, do you have crackers? Like Premium Plus, saltines, Breton, some kind of crackers, chips, breadcrumbs. Because chicken's a funny one because it depends on how finely ground your chicken is. Yeah, and breadcrumbs. So if you have breadcrumbs, I would take a quarter of a cup, maybe a couple of tablespoons. Just put a little, so wash your hands really well. Put enough in so that you're only gonna put enough in so it holds shape. So you don't need a whole lot. If you can have, if you're good with breadcrumbs. It's hard to tell without. It's hard to tell with ground chicken, because ground chicken is one of those funny things. Depending on the brand name, depending on if it's been frozen or not, it can't I'll take the back. I can't find it. I'll take that back. I can't find them. Can you find crackers? Like saltine crackers or something? Something that I don't want to say, or a loaf of bread on hand. Okay, so if you have the crackers on hand, you're going to take probably, I'd say about, if they're the big Breton ones, probably about 4 or 5. If they're the small Premium Plus ones, you'll start with about a half dozen, so about 6. Breton crackers, yeah, you'll probably need about 4 if they're the bigger round ones. If you have bread, 2 slices. And you're just gonna, if you have bread on hand, just take 2 slices and crumble up as fine as you can get, run between your hands, and you're gonna add that. That could also, because that'll help. Because it's just, essentially we're using what we need to get the moisture out. So while I'm helping troubleshoot the chicken burger problem, guys, everybody else, is their burgers holding okay? Mine are holding well. So mine's holding shape. Is everybody else is holding okay? I'm waiting for comments. If your burgers are holding okay, then wash your hands, and you're going to get a frying pan. You're going to get your frying pans on. Oh, yours are already in the pan. Okay, perfect. So if they're, for those thin, you're only going to need to go about, if you have a meat thermometer, I always have to check mine. It's well done. It's 155 Fahrenheit or 68 Celsius. Yeah, 68 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. So if you're using a meat thermometer, if not, I say general thumbs, about 5 minutes aside, depending on how thick they are. And so they'll be golden brown. Meat will obviously the juice will run clear. So at about 5 minutes aside, if you were to take, if you don't have a meat thermometer for 68 to measure 68 degrees Celsius, you could cut it in half and you see obviously there's going to be no pink. Everything's going to be solidly cooked all the way through. And for the person who's using chicken, let me know how it's going. Keep me posted. All right. All right. Okay. Trying to crumble bread. Okay, so that should breads normally when I first started learning how to make them, that's what I used. I didn't use breadcrumbs. I just crumbled up bread, kind of like you would a stuffing mix. If you like stuff like Thanksgiving and stuffing, like Thanksgiving dinner, like turkey and that kind of stuff, if you ever make a turkey burger, I'd actually cook down frozen cranberries and mix that in with sourdough bread, and then put that in my burgers and make like a turkey Thanksgiving style burger. Super good. So how are we doing here? I'm gonna cook one in the pan to show you guys, and then the rest I'm gonna do on my grill because I like using my barbecue. So guys, you do need a hot pan. You can't do this in a cold pan and just stir it in because your burgers will fall apart. It also take longer to cook on the outside. All right. Have you guys ever cooked, like, do you guys make much off the stove on your own? How are the chicken burgers going? Okay, so let me know how they're holding. I just got a message. I'm wondering if there was a teacher who was going to come and check in on this. Actually, no, it's one of my friends. She doesn't cook, so asked me. I told her I was doing this and I was going to make burgers. She's actually going to come by and pick up. We're going to do a contactless. Essentially, her kids are gone for the weekend. She doesn't cook much, so I'm going to make her a Bannock burger on Bannock to go, and she's going to stop by and pick it up later. So my pan. Trick to know if your pan's hot enough. You put water on your hand and flick the pan. If it pops, then your pan's hot enough. If it doesn't pop, you need another minute or so. So things like egg, roasted red peppers, we call them mostly like egg and breadcrumb stuff. We call that binders. So it helps just the meat hold its shape together. It's used a lot in stuff like meatballs and that. I tend to try to use things like roasted red peppers because we live in Alberta. It's a lot higher altitude, and it doesn't dry out. It doesn't dry out while cooking, and it's actually really nice to reheat too the next day. so you don't have to eat it all in one go. So how are you guys doing? Are people heating up their pans? I know some people are already in the pan. Okay, but are they holding? That's the main thing. I know they might be shaping, but if you're still shaping them, that's okay because you are using a double batch. Don't worry. Don't worry about spelling. I guess one of the perks of being a teacher is I can figure it out pretty quickly from even if it's not spelt the greatest. And I normally have to figure that out in both languages. So the fun one is when they mislook up the word in French and they pick the wrong. They mean one thing but choose the wrong word. I get that a lot, and it's pretty normal. So don't worry about spelling. But are your burgers holding together? That's the main thing right now. Are they shaping? Like, is the shape holding enough that they don't fall apart? While you guys are answering, I'm gonna get my burger. That's hot enough. I'm just gonna cook one for now. Okay, so I can do the rest of my grill a little bit. So those who are making, remember, do not keep them solid on one side. Don't try to flip them backward. Wait till they're cooked solid, like 4 to 5 minutes on one side. Yes, they're holding. Sweet. So for those who have stuff in the pan, how's it going? I'm just going to clean off my countertop, move my bannock away because obviously I don't want it near raw meat. Sweet. I'm so glad that even on a Friday you guys are coming out to ask questions and have some fun and cook with me. I'm going to turn on my light in here because it's getting pretty dark. Like I said, doing stuff in the, leaving it on one side until it's nice and cooked, until it's cooked almost all the way through. So about 4 to 5 minutes, then flipping it will keep all the moisture in, and never poke it with a fork. Because if you poke it with a fork, you're letting all the juice out. So you want to give it at least a good solid, if you're not using a meat thermometer, a good solid 4 minutes on each side. If they're thinner, if they're thicker, probably about 5. Meat thermometer is the best way to measure it. If they're cooked a solid 4 or 5 minutes on each side, and then you break it open, obviously no pink. Everything should be consistent color all the way through. And yeah, and no pink. And juices run clear. Any questions so far? You doing okay? I'm gonna probably have to. If you notice it start, you might have to turn down your pan a bit. So cooking them on medium, they by the time you flip them, they should be brown. They shouldn't be. Is it extra lean chicken or just lean chicken? Because if it's lean or extra, well, most of it's lean ground chicken or extra lean, you're probably gonna need a tablespoon. Yeah, tablespoon. So mine. I have to turn mine down. My pan's a little too hot. I let it heat up a little bit too much. Okay. So mine's doing okay. I let mine first. So I know some people are probably leaving there now because it's all good. If you guys are piecing up, I'm gonna stick around and say how things are going. If your burgers are cooked all the way through, you can top them. Enjoy with your family. Thank you guys for coming out again. I'll be doing double chocolate chip cookies next week. So for those I teach Matthew, the ones I made in class with some modifications and laying some nuts. Yep, you can use olive oil, canola oil, any kind of oil you want. Whatever your family normally uses for cooking. If you have a cooking spray too, that works too. I'm not using any oil because my meat's like a medium. I like my when I use ground beef, I tend to use a medium ground beef. All right, timer. I always use regular to medium ground beef. It has a lot more fat in it, but when you're barbecuing, it just kind of runs out anyway into the barbecue. Chicken, you're gonna have to use oil. I find chicken sticks a lot more to a grill too. So if I was going to barbecue these, I would probably maybe add a little bit of olive oil in my meat, or what tastes really good, bacon. I've bought bacon and cut it up into tiny pieces and mix that in too. Because some meats are just too lean and they can fall apart a lot easier. So my burger's still cooking. It's not quite there yet. It's getting there. How are your guys turning out? If you guys are happy with like ketchup and mayo and tomato and stuff like that, super. I like mayo on mine. I like mustard, ketchup, cheese, lots of cheese. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some cheese. What's really good too is if you like, I'm going to use a cheddar with jalapeno because that's kind of the flavors I'm going for a bit. I also got some vintage cheese. It's called. Is this an extra old? Has a really nice sharp taste to it. If you like things like Havarti or Kraft singles, doesn't matter. Whatever floats your boat, whatever you're happy with. I'm not gonna grate. I'm just gonna cut it up because I'm gonna put a little. My burger is almost done, so I have another minute or so on mine, and I'm just gonna cut a little bit of cheese, and I'm gonna put it on the top of my burger so it melts while it's in the pan.
how's it going? I know, like you asking how's it going. We don't have as many people commenting as last time, so I'm just going to use a little bit of cheese. Might make a coleslaw after, actually. So I'm just going to check mine, make sure mine's cooked all the way through. Have you used meat thermometer? So mine's actually done. I'm just going to clean off my meat thermometer. My cheese is melting a little bit. There. I'm just going to let the cheese melt a little bit. How hot should they be before I flip? So they're going to have to be brown, like solid, like a nice golden brown. I'd leave them at least if your pan's on a medium heat, you need to leave them at least 4 to 5 minutes per chicken before you flip. Because you don't want to have to keep flipping back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You want to be able to have them cook one on one side and then flip once. They're brown on the bottom. So if you were to look at the side of the burger, does it look pink all the way to the pan, or does it start to look like more of that grayish color that you get when you cook chicken, or that more whitish, that off-white? I want to say gray. But the brown one. Yep, if they're about white, about halfway's up, then you can flip them. I like broccoli sauce. I find it a very neat way. So it may not look the prettiest. I forgot to buy lettuce, so I'm out of lettuce. I can grab a small plate. I'm going to take a piece of Bennett. I'm going to top it with a little bit of broccoli slaw and some sauce. You can use ketchup. You can use whatever you feel like. That's what I'm going to do. And you can get fancy. You can have some fun with it if you like relish and that stuff. I like steak sauce because I have a lot of flavor in my burger. You can put, I've done tzatziki. So I've done tzatziki before with like a chicken burger or a lamb burger. When it's, yep. So it'll be done. Now you can do multiple burgers at one time. Well, I'm going to take a little bit of slaw and put that on top. Now I've made actual broccoli slaw all the way through. I'm just kind of doing a smaller one right now. My cheese is not fully melted, but it's all good. It's going to taste good.
if you're doing it as a full burger, you can add extra ketchup on top. I have toppers that are like garlic and onion and stuff like that. You can top with bacon. Oh, temperature for chicken. Let me see if I check my thermometer. Temperature for chicken is 165. So it's 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 74 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. Top a little bit. I just made a quick one. I'll probably throw some French fry. So my cheese didn't melt all the way. It's a little anemic, but I have my Bennett. I have some veggies. I'll probably throw some French fries later in the air fryer to eat with that. Yeah, that's kind of. How are yours turning out? So let me catch mine. See what it looks like going through. So mine's cooked all the way through. It looks a little, it's not pink, it's a little reddish because of roasted red peppers. But I'm just gonna cut through my bannock. Bannock has a little bit of a crunchy texture to it, which is kind of nice. The bannock's cooked all the way through. Fit it all in one bite, it's kind of, we'll see. Turned out pretty good. I probably could have put a little bit more hot sauce, but in cases like that, like I found I could add a little bit more to my burger. I would put a little bit more sriracha, maybe some sriracha on top, or yeah, you can put a fried egg on top. All different kinds of goodness. So how are you guys turning out? I know some of you guys is probably getting close to supper time, and your parents are probably, if your parents are working, they might be coming home, or they might be right there with you, helping you out. Any other comments? How's it going? You guys almost finished? Or close to finished? Or how? Nice. Oh, that's pretty good. 9 burgers. Look at you cooking. I've also done this recipe and wrapped it in bacon and baked it in the oven. So I've used this for meatballs too, not just for burgers. I've used very similar, except I added a lot more oregano and basil and a bit of rosemary and things and thyme and things to them, a lot bit more along the lines of Italian spices. And then I've made them into meatballs. Also, like I said, wrapped them in bacon. Make them into a meatball and wrap them in bacon. Especially, it tastes really good with chicken because chicken can be a little dry on the drier side. But very tasty. I'm glad you like them though. I know, and they're gluten free. Not that everybody's gluten free, but I like it for the fact that it's a simple it can accommodate to a lot of allergies and a lot of intolerances because there's no dairy, there's no dairy, there's no, I'm thinking other than the Bennett that has dairy in it, there's no dairy in the actual burger or poultry. Fair, you have to wait for dinner. But you know what? That's pretty cool. I bet your parents would be super appreciative when they get home that you have supper ready for everybody and that you guys are trying something new. My Bennett's a little on the crunchier side. I could add a little bit more moisture to it, but still tastes really good. Any other? Everybody else got theirs made? I'm going to take another bite while I'm waiting for a comment. I think what I should have done is I should have grated the cheese because the cheese would have melted a little bit better. But so are all your burgers cooked? How do you get them all? Did you get them all cooked? You too, guys. Enjoy. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. If you don't have any other questions and you guys are you're well underway, you're almost finishing up there now. You guys are free to sign out. I'll end the stream. I'll give another minute or two to end the stream in case there's any questions. Enjoy. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you next week. You're welcome. Thank you guys for coming out.